Second incident from the Battle of Badr, again before the battle actually started. Brilliant example of how to plan in advance before you put yourself in a situation. The Prophet ﷺ intended to meet the Quraysh at the area or the vicinity of Badr. Now there's the famous wells there that had the water, and what they decided to do was reach there first, camp in front of the water so that the Quraysh did not have access to the water throughout the battle, which would hinder their performance very slightly and give them an automatic edge in the battle. Now the Quraysh had not planned themselves as well. They knew their numbers were a lot more vast, they were a lot more arrogant about the situation, and they didn't realise the scale of the problem until they reached there and they saw that actually the Muslims had all the access to the water and they did not have any access whatsoever where they were. Again, obviously the battle itself ensued and we all know the rest of the story, but planning ahead and seeing the situation in advance before you actually go in to see how you can strategically put yourself in the best position possible, by knowing that, at the end of the day, they've accepted they're going into war, but we need to make the most of this situation as well. The next battle, which, and I know a lot of Muslims always say we were defeated at the Battle of Uhud. Wallahi, we weren't. We were not defeated at the Battle of Uhud until right at the end. Uhud was, as far as the Quraysh were concerned, it was an absolute massacre for the Quraysh for the first 5/6 of the battle, because it really was. They were completely defeated, they were running away. As soon as the Muslims arrived there, the Prophet saw the strategic location of where the battle was going to take place. He picked the location of where the battle was going to take place. He set up the archers on top of the mountain, and he dictated the terms of the battle before anybody else put them in that position. The archer's job was basically to guard the rear of the army. There was a big mountain in between. People could quite easily sneak around the back and attack the Muslim army from behind. Something needed to be done about this to protect the rear of the Muslim army so that the front of it can concentrate on the battle as much as possible. And that's exactly what they did. The archers were given the instructions. It wouldn't have to be many of them. As long as they did their jobs properly, it was absolutely fine. The archers were placed strategically on the mountain, and the Quraysh, for the first sections of the battle, really could not get anywhere near the Muslims from behind. The posterior of the army was completely protected, and they could not do anything about the front whatsoever. The Muslims were absolutely slaughtering them. And we know about all the different people that were killed in that battle as well. But it wasn't until there was a disobedience of the Prophet ﷺ, and these are the incidents that we see throughout the seerah, that the only times where mistakes are made are when instructions that the Prophet ﷺ has given are not followed to the letter. And this is one of the bigger incidents. The people on the mountain saw that the battle was being won. Now, strategically, they had to stay on that mountain until everything was finished. Because even though, yes, the Quraysh were running away from the battlefield, they had already accepted defeat, but it wasn't until the cavalry of the Quraysh was still standing to one side, watching the entire battle, still waiting for the right opportunity. And again, this comes down to the cunningness of Khalid ibn al-Walid, who was really leading the cavalry for the mushrikeen at the time. And it wasn't until the archers saw this and they became slightly greedy, saying, if we don't come down, we will miss out on all this that the other brothers, our Muslim brothers, are gaining at the moment, collecting all the spoils that are left over. We need to get involved. We need to get a piece of this action as well. Obviously, they all started to run down. It left a handful of them on the mountain that were nothing, that couldn't do anything at all about people coming from the back of the army. And it was then that the defeat in that particular battle had started, and that's what continued. So up until that point, everything was going according to plan, and the Prophet's plan, the Prophet ﷺ's plan, was thorough, pinpoint, and very detailed as well. Let's move on to the next big battle that happened, and this was the battle of the trench, or the Al-Khandaq. And again, we see the Prophet's characteristics of his real army prowess coming out here. Sitting with the Sahaba, when he heard that they had gathered, the Quraysh had gathered a vast army that was approaching Medina, without them having too much warning about it. Do they meet this army head on, or do they find something else to do? And he initially was of the opinion that he wanted to go out, and the Sahaba, they were doing shura, and the Sahaba said to him, Ya Rasulullah, is this divine intervention that's telling you to do this, or is this the cunningness and the planning of battle? And the Prophet ﷺ said, no, this is the cunningness and the planning of battle. And that it was at that point when they realised this wasn't a divine issue, that they stated to him, actually, we think it will be more sensible and it will be better. This was the Ansar, that if we stayed in Medina and defended the city from inside. And it was at that point that Salman al-Farisi, one of the Sahaba, the great Sahaba, said to the Prophet, he was from the Majus, the fire worshippers, and he said to him that something that the Arabs were not aware of, when we used to have enemies approaching us that we couldn't cope with, we used to dig a trench to prevent them from coming close for us to be able to control the situation. And this was an idea that was very new, but again, it was using the abilities of the people that you have around you in a way that you can harness all the different strengths that exist in your society as much as possible. Just because we as Arabs or as Muslims in Arabia only know this particular way to fight and to battle does not mean that is the only correct way we should do it. So if somebody has brought on something which is new, innovative, and will work and is sensible, then fantastic. We will gladly take it on board. We will bring it into our practice, and we will see how we can implement this in the best possible way. It's keeping an open mind at the same time, but being aware of what's around you as well. And I mean, like I said, I could go on and on and on for examples for all four of the different topics, but just to give you more of a flavour as to all the different skills and the characteristics of the Prophet, really, ﷺ, set examples for us for all the different sections of the society that he lived. He will always be the greatest leader that we've ever had and ever will have, because of the different scenarios constantly that he went throughout his lifetime. I'm going to end the series really very quickly, just touching on the last four talks have all been about different sections of the Prophet ﷺ. And all they really have been, if I'm honest, is more of a flavour of what really occurred throughout his life. If any of you have read the Sirah before, for example, you could open up the Sirah of Ibn Hisham. Huge. If you read the one which isn't concise, absolutely huge. Riyadh al-Salihin is a very good Sirah book. If anyone, and I urge everybody really to go and read it if you haven't already. It's not particularly, it's extensive enough to contain a lot of detail, but it will give you a very good insight into the Prophet's life as well. Sorry, yes, Rahiq al-Makhtoum. I haven't written this one down. It's a very, very good book. There is the English version that's available, and you can get it pretty much from most places now. Please go and read it. It's whether you want it as a bedtime read, whether you want it as a daytime read, anything at all. It won't take you very long to finish it. It's a very good book. It's written very, very well. And hopefully we can take a lot of the aspects that we've learnt over the past 4 weeks into our everyday practice and benefit from that as much as possible, inshallah. This has hopefully been an insight into a few of the things that we can look at into the Prophet's lifestyle, and we can take a lot of lessons and try and implement a few of those things into our lives, inshallah.